Update: I want to read my daughter's diary to find out why she left us. My wife says absolutely not. /r/all. First and foremost, thank you all so much for your condolences and for sharing your thoughts and experiences dealing with losing a loved one. Secondly, I'm sorry if this post isn't necessarily the neatest. I am still at a loss for words. Basically, I'm a pathetic excuse of a father for not realizing that my son goes on Reddit. I don't keep track of the social media apps he uses, so he saw my original post where many of y'all were urging me to read my daughter's diary. My son did so behind our backs, and we only came to find out when he lashed out, calling his sister selfish and all the names under the sun for doing what she did. My wife, on the other hand, is beyond pissed at my son for reading our daughter's diary. She said that our daughter is going to be mad at our family when she gets back, only to find out that one of us read it. I'm guessing she hasn't accepted the fact that she's gone and will never return. As for me and my wife, we haven't read our daughter's diary, only our son did. Based on my son's reaction, I can assume that you guys were right, that her diary is filled with hatred, as if someone else wrote in it. I don't know the contents of it, but I know how and who my daughter was, and her brother loved her for who she was, and now, he can't stand it when his sister's name is mentioned. That was exactly what I was afraid of, that after reading her diary, our perspective of her would be completely different. My son is temporarily speaking with a family member who's a therapist, and will be switching him over to a different one hopefully by next week to avoid conflict of interests, and as a family, we're now in contact with a counselor. I want to talk to my wife about her getting into therapy too, as she still thinks our daughter is still here but she's just away on a trip, my wife calls it. But beyond that, still nothing much has changed. My wife still cries every night, and though my son very much upset with his sister, we still find him around his sister's room. And for me? Nothing, still empty, and probably always will be, which isn't fair to my son and wife, so I'll probably seek a therapist for myself as well. Plus, I know many marriages don't survive after the death of a child, so marriage counseling is something I want to bring up to my wife when I feel is appropriate. What about the diary? It's gone, hidden well within our home. Hell, I may even forget where it's at years down the line, but I do know I want to read it when I'm ready, whether that's with my wife or not. I want to know her struggles, read her fun times, if she has any written, and what made her do it. I know reading it won't give me closure, but it will give me an insight of what she was going through, and let that be a lesson for me to be better for my son and to just always be there whether he's feeling fine or not. That's about it. My heart still physically hurts from the loss of my daughter and for the rest of my family, as they're also in so much pain. Some of you guys might be expecting this update to be about the contents of the diary, but I'm choosing not to read it for a long time. And if my wife wants to, I won't stop her, but I do want to tell her that she may not recognize our own daughter as my son didn't. Only time will heal our wounds, and lots of therapy and support. Thank you all so much for your thoughts and prayers. I can say for myself that it brought me a bit of comfort after such a massive loss. Again, thank you all so much. Edit: many apologies for the typos, my mind has been in shambles. Move on to the comment. I'm glad you're getting your son therapy, it sounds like he needs it after what he read, whatever it is. I strongly advise both you and your wife have therapy, as well as it's clear you're both struggling also. I'm so sorry for your loss and I wish you the best. Obviously this is very tragic, but I'm wondering if I'm the only one who noticed that he refers to his son as her in both posts. Did you notice that? I did. Probably a typo, which is understandable considering the emotions Op must be experiencing right now. I also thought it was a typo, but he refers to his son as her 4 to 5 times in both posts, so I wasn't sure if there was a gender thing going on. Edit: I don't need upvotes for this. I feel a little weird getting upvotes at someone else's expense. I only saw it once in each post. I think it's more likely that trying to write about everyone without using their names just got confusing. He said her so many times referring to his wife and daughter that it probably was just a mix-up. He says his and him many times as well. I don't know if I'm describing this right, but I commonly mix up the gender labeling of possessives by reversing/inverting the relation being described, e.g. this action is being related to the daughter so it gets a her even though it's a him that's doing the relating, and I figured that's what was going on here. Nah dude, you just can't read. He called his son her once. Edit, he's talking about how the son feels about her, how he feels about her. Very simple. I'm not accusing up of this at all, but one reason some people might be curious about it is accidentally mixing up the gender of a character is often one of the tells that a story is a creative writing attempt. It by itself doesn't mean something is a creative writing attempt, but it does raise some people's suspicions and gets them watching for other signs. I assume every post on this sub to be either real or fantasy. The important thing is sound advice because people in similar situations can benefit from it even if the topic is fabricated. As an autistic person, I read this sub to help me understand people more, so even if it's fake, the comments on how to respond to social situations are helpful. I feel that way about other similar subs, even AITA, because advice isn't its explicit purpose but it's still giving a judgment. And even if the story didn't happen to the up of a post, it or something similar happened to someone. And I'd much rather believe a fake story than hurt someone by not believing a real one. Exactly. My GF doesn't use Reddit and every time I tell her about something on it she says, how do you know that's real? And I say the same thing as you did. That it doesn't matter. It's entertainment and I have found so many things that have genuinely helped me on here so I don't really care if it's true or not. I figured he was trying to maintain some privacy and change some story details. So maybe the son is actually a second daughter. I'm very confused, he says he almost every time. I think you're misreading this and making a huge deal out of a typo. He talks about his daughter and wife so much while also talking about how his son is dealing with issues about them that it's pretty normal to add a one-letter mistake. Get over whatever weird thing you've got gone on here. I keep a journal and I can tell you that if someone read it they would probably have a very incomplete picture of me. I typically only write out my most negative emotions because for me it's a way to purge those thoughts and feelings. They are certainly not all that I am, so if you ever do read it, try to remember you're probably reading the very darkest thoughts she had and not the whole picture. This is really important. Even if the diary is filled with awful thoughts it doesn't mean those are the only thoughts she had. The diary was probably the outlet she used for emotions when she felt poorly and overwhelmed. If the whole diary is negative it does not mean that her whole life was. Exactly. As a teen, I only wrote in my journal when I was elated or incredibly depressed or pissed. It was the place to express all that I couldn't, and didn't want to, openly express to the people around me. It was the place for my inner struggles and represented only a part of who I was as a person. Great point. I too only ever write down my thoughts when I'm completely overwhelmed and need a way to vent and understand what's going on in my head. Seconded. As a fellow journal user, I have looked back on old journals I wrote myself and even then they're hard to read sometimes because they're mainly filled with the negative emotions. They don't show the whole picture, for sure. Exactly this. As a therapist, journaling is something I encourage young people to do when they're struggling with intense and overwhelming thoughts. It's a tool to get them from their head and out into the world with as little harm as possible. If someone was to read the journals of my clients, I know for a fact that it would not paint a picture of who they are as a person, rather it would just show the overwhelming and normally highly upsetting things their mind would focus on. My therapist suggested this very thing to me, and it has been surprisingly helpful for me to explain deeper thoughts and feelings that may be difficult to share or describe. Because of that, I completely agree with this point. Journals do not give a full perspective of who someone really is. I mostly only use mine for painful thoughts and feelings, to try to make sense of it, like untangling a knot. I have no reason to write about all of the happiness in my life, because there's no need to release it, or untangle it. My journal would show a very dark, painful perspective of my life, not all of the memories and moments that I want to keep. In the original post, I actually firmly believed they should read it, to get some kind of understanding and closure. I think I agree now that this journal will probably never give them anything but more pain, and probably take them further from understanding who she was as a person. From understanding who she was as a